Welcome to a little bit of urban homesteading in central Ohio, where it is wet and chilly and the weather loves to change its mind. So I'm going to take you through some of this mess that you see in front of you and give you an idea of what it's like here in Zone 6B, where I live really just downtown in a small city outside Columbus. So technically, this is a very urban area. There's a lot of rules about what I can and cannot do. Like I can't have chickens and I can't have quail. I can't, I can't have outside rabbits and so on. So there's lots of things I cannot do, but there are also lots of things I can. I do not have an HOA. My backyard is my own. And as you can see, I've got a bit of a mess here going. I think it's important to note that when you're out here gardening, it's not all the pretty, beautiful pictures that you see at the end of the season. But here we go. Let us show you some of the things that I have going on here at the end of April. Down here we have onions, and actually it's time for me to uncover it. I covered all of this up because we had hail coming through. But I don't want to rot the onions, so it's time for me to pull out all but a small amount of the mulch and just set it aside so that they can breathe. I have 95 onion sets. Well, not sets, onion transplants in here. So the difference is a set is when you have those little bulbs that are like already hardened off. They look like mini onions or shallots or something, and you put those in the ground. They tend not to get as big. If you can get transplants, you can get more of them, and they tend to get bigger. So as you can see here, they were just little tiny 6-inch things with beginnings of bulbs. So they're very young. I've not yet had success in starting my own onions from seed. So that is why I chose this approach. I got them from Johnny's Seeds, and we will see how it goes this year. I want to get big onions. This is the Patterson variety. So I will come through and finish this later, but as you can see, that'll let it breathe much better. I believe in mulch, but if you have too much mulch, you can actually hold moisture in there in a place like here and it will rot. Like if you're in the dry west, they'll tell you, oh, you need lots and lots and lots of mulch in order to keep things moist. And I noticed in Virginia, sometimes in the heat of, say, August, that was useful. But here in Ohio, we are so wet, especially in the spring. The last thing you want to do is rot your seedlings. So you have to be much more careful about your application of mulch. Here we have a mixture of turnips, radishes, and arugula. And how can I tell what is what? So turnips radishes are smooth. There's nothing about this leaf that is even a little bit prickly or annoying. And I have been trying to sort of thin them out. As you can see, that actually has space around it, but the leaves grow up and fill in the space. But turnips are prickly, and there's these little tiny itty bitty hair-like things, and they'll poke you when you're brushing up against them, and I hate it. I actually think I'm going to use gloves whenever I work in this bed because the feeling of that is awful. And then here I have arugula, which I planted for my husband, so I need to try to get him to start eating it. So I've got all of that in here. But here's some fun things. This was my bed. This was my summer bed last year. Somewhere in here is some volunteer stuff. There we go. Look at that. I have volunteer romaine lettuce down there that I planted last year. Oh, well, hello there, kitty. And I have volunteer beans. I had bush beans in here last year. And I'm just going to let them go. All right, so here I've got carrots. And I do have to begin to thin it a little bit, but I like to wait until they're large enough that I can really tell which ones are surviving and which ones aren't. Because as you can see, I've got a mixture here of patchiness and not patchiness. It's actually my first successful attempt at carrots. I've tried before. I never kept them evenly moist. I think this is the first time I really made progress. This is my weed. This is lamb's ear, or lamb's quarters. I guess it's edible, but it doesn't smell good to me, so I don't care. I'm not gonna eat it. I did plant peas in here. These are sugar snap peas, and I don't know why. I had them all the way around this trellis and they only came up over there. So I have some serious trouble with sugar snap peas in this bed, and I'm gonna have to figure out why. But if I had kept everything evenly moist as I should have, you see how big this carrot is? That's how all of those would be had I properly watered. So I'm still learning how to keep these seedlings really well. One of the things if you're learning to garden is to just experiment. So this bed here is a 2.5 foot high. It's really nice if you want to sit down and weed, very comfortable. But when you want to bend over and plant things and put things in it, it's super annoying. So you do have to think about height and what that means. It's too tall to squat next to, but it's too short to stand next to. So you really have to sit in a chair. So this is a great height for somebody who maybe has mobility issues, or is a senior citizen and they just really want to sit. Maybe not so great for those of us who are still looking to exercise in the garden. I actually like this a lot. This is a 6-inch bed. And it's just enough to keep the compost off the ground and to have clear paths, because otherwise it gets really messy for me. But at the same time, it's I can squat next to it. I can run a hoe in it. It's really easy to push like a wheelbarrow up next to it and dump stuff in. So I'm actually a fan of this height. So in here I have more peas, as you can see, but these aren't sugar snaps. These are shelling peas. And they were successful. So I don't know if we're talking variety or if we're talking just specifically sugar snaps are difficult. I haven't figured that out yet. Here I've got baby carrots all over the place in here, so I'm super happy about that. I planted them all at different times because I'm trying to get some succession going. And in here I've got spinach, as you can see. It's my only bed of spinach. We don't use a lot of it, but I wanted a little in here. And here's where I get really excited. I have cabbages and more cabbages and more cabbages. And I do find it interesting which ones are bigger than others. I don't know if it's the depth I planted them at, or if maybe there's a difference in fertility on those sides of the bed. I will learn as I go. But as I'm going to let these get to about 1 inch tall, and rather than thin, or maybe 2 inches tall, whatever that is, rather than thin them out, I'm going to carefully lift them all out of the ground and then transplant some, put one back there, but then transplant the others elsewhere. I don't start things in pots. I don't have enough room. I start everything in the beds as seeds. So either it succeeds or it doesn't. And since I was so successful, I'm going to use that like my little seed start there and find other places in the garden to tuck those in. Here I have stuff that has not yet come up, but the whole middle here is more carrots. So I'm super excited. I should have plenty of carrots this year. I use probably a dozen carrots a week. So if I can somehow provide my own carrots, well, there's one more sense of like independence in my life that I've got. Now I did also plant some tomatoes here, and you're probably like, how on earth are you planting them from seeds? You're supposed to have seedlings. I know I'm supposed to have seedlings. However, I have had some serious success every single year way out there in that garden. 4.5, 5 years ago, something like that, we had seedlings out there of cherry tomatoes, and they have come back every single year. They volunteer. They were an heirloom variety. They dropped their seed, they volunteer, and they do really well. And it's usually like August, maybe early August, sometimes as late August, just depends on the year, when I get those cherry tomatoes. So I thought, let's just plant some small variety tomatoes that are determinate, that have a short season, something that maybe has the potential of being able to get me a harvest by mid-August that I can make sauce out of. If it doesn't work, I'll go to the store and I'll get some Romas and plant them. But this year I wanted to experiment with seeds. Here I have celeriac, and this could take a very long time to sprout if it succeeds at all. Everything I've been reading about it is like, it's picky, it's difficult. It can take like 3 weeks or more to germinate. So we'll see what happens. They're all in the middle. Here on the edges, we have Armenian cucumber. And once again, if I have multiple successful seedlings, I am not going to thin. I'm going to transplant. So this is going to have a big trellis on the outside, but there are other areas in my gardens where I either have a trellis or I can put one in, and I have grow bags coming. So I will say take this one out and put it in a grow bag while I leave this one in the bed and let it grow up and over. Here at the ends are some squash that I hope will come up just like those Armenian cucumbers. All of these things, well, you're probably like, what is this mess? So the boards there actually have been used to hold down netting and cold frames that I've had over the winter. And I am going to have to put in the cold frames again. You see this fiberglass? I'm going to have to put in that clear plastic again tonight because it's going to drop back down into the 40s over the weekend. So that's not good for like the baby cucurbits and things like that. So I will put the cold frames back up, and thus the bricks and the boards stay out here as my anchors. So this is PVC pipe with holes in it, and it was cheaper than the ones without holes. And we are going to cut this down into like 1 foot pieces and maybe drill extra holes. And we are going to strategically put it in various places in the garden with the end down. So it's like a tube going down into the soil. And then we will be able to put compost into the top. Not compost, but like scraps from the garden. So let's say I thin out some of the turnips or the radishes and I put the greens in the top. It'll feed the earthworms. And we will see how that goes. Here is all goldenrod. This gets tall and beautiful, and it's native to this area. The bees love it, and it blooms all fall. So it's a very important thing to have in your garden if you want native pollinators. In here, I have flowers. So I think the things that are probably already coming up over here are most likely calendula volunteers from last year. You can see back here, I have some echinacea, actually. And there's wild violets back there, and then there's more echinacea there. I did scatter a whole bunch of seeds, and I think that's what some of this little stuff coming up is. And then covered it in straw and figured whatever takes. I had a whole bunch of really old flower seeds, dill seeds, things like that. And I just stuck it all into a bag, and I shook it up, and I layered it thick, and then buried it with straw and figured what takes. But this is part of my pollinator garden. Here we have some rosemary, and there used to be oregano here, but I may have accidentally weed whacked it down. I'm probably gonna have to plant more. And here I have lavender. It was a little early to plant it, but it's good for it. All right, so this is a pear tree. I have 2 dwarf pear trees that we prune rather brutally to try to keep small in this little space. Our water pipe actually goes this direction all the way to the back, but we talked to the water guys and the tree guys about it, and they said these have shallow roots. You actually don't have to worry about it because they're probably about 1 to 2 feet below the surface, and the water pipe's more than that. So the big risk to the water pipe is actually those big, really mature trees that are known for invading. Looks like we're going to have to prune that off because it's falling down to the ground. All right, so here we have some pots. And again, I'm experimenting. I don't know how things are going to go, but I've got tomatoes and marigolds in these pots. But I honestly think that the things that are popping up right now are probably neither. I mean, maybe, because I did plant the tomatoes there, but I think there's a very good possibility that what I have popping up is just weeds. This isn't all fresh compost. It's mixed with some old potting soil from before. So we'll find out. And here I planted some peppers, and I've been putting cloches over these things because it's still gotten down to like 38 degrees. We've had some really nasty thunderstorms, some risk of hail and things like that. So I put little plastic cloches over top of these things to keep them warm at night, just like I put plastic over these, and we will see how things go over the course of time. Now you can see my mess back there. Right now it's holding random stuff for the garden, but ultimately we want to have a sitting area back there. We'll see how it goes. But I think it's important for you to know that the process of getting your garden where you want it is actually pretty involved, and it's messy when you go along the way. So here we have a row, it's about 13, 14 feet of potatoes. And behind that, you see that circle? I have beans planted along the edges of that circle, and going up is a pole that I will be attaching wires. So you see those right there? Right, so I will be attaching those to the top of all of these poles. I'm gonna have 3 poles full of like half teepee worth of beans. So beans and potatoes in this patch. The netting is to keep the squirrels out. The squirrels and the cat are actually my biggest issue. Wanted to see if I could find some little seedlings for you here, so I planted these on 2 separate nights. Down there was one night and this was the next night, and the left side has bloomed. Sorry about my finger in the camera. All right. The left side has started popping up through, the right side has not. So here we have some baby potatoes coming up through. And I had noticed what looked like squirrels digging, and that's the last thing I need. So I took all of that out. So yeah, something I will be working on is coming through these areas and continuing to make raised beds out of all of this. There won't be any grass left inside this barrier. It will be all garden. So hopefully it won't be so messy when you see it next time. Now over here I have my row of trees. I have my orchard. So you can see it kind of goes this way. It's following the sun. The morning sun is that direction. So we are going to have to keep pruning it back. But these 3 trees are apple trees. And they're dwarf. They won't get really any taller than what they are, but we're going to prune them back anyway just because they're too tall to manage. This is an elderberry bush down here. It's a decorative variety, but it should have berries if I have some in the front. So if they ever bloom together, we'll be good. That is a sweet cherry I planted yesterday. And here I have, this is a peach. And this is oh, no, I have that. Did I have that right? No, yes, this is an apricot. Sorry, I can never remember what I've done when. And this is another apple. And all of these are dwarves. They'll stay very small, and we will prune them to keep them small. But one of the things I wanted to be able to do was come in these walkways from my front yard and walk down this beautiful aisle of trees. All that stuff on the side we chop down and use as organic material. And here is rhubarb. I do want more, but I do get some off of it every year, a few pounds, and I'm going to want more rhubarb in the long run. So that is all my front garden here. Here I'm going to be planting asparagus. And like I said, I'm getting some grow bags, and I'm going to be putting grow bags in all over the place. I have beets and tomatoes and all sorts of things that I need to plant. So let me take you to the backyard here. Well, this is all backyard, right? But back here, my feet are all wet from the water. It's crazy. So back here, we just put these beds in. These are for strawberries. We're getting some bare root strawberries here any day now. I've got 25 of them, so I'm going to put 8 in 2 of them and 9 in a third. And these are 8-foot by 4-foot beds. They're 10 inches deep. So I got a mixture of topsoil, leaf mulch, and compost from a local delivery service so that it wouldn't cost so much. So I had to shovel it off my driveway. But I filled all of that in, and hopefully next year we will have strawberries. Here is my blueberry bush, and oh my word, look at all that. I'm gonna have a lot of blueberries this year, although I do need to research it and make sure that it's still healthy. This soil is the only patch of my garden that's supposed to be acidic. Everywhere else tends to be neutral to alkaline. That's just the way it is. Our soil is on top of like limestone deposits way down deep, and so we struggle with anything that needs to be highly acidic like blueberries. So this bed has like the acidifier, the soil acidifier at the bottom, and then it has a whole bunch of peat moss, and then it's got like tree and bush bark, soil, that kind of thing. Everything to try to keep it as acid as possible. And it has done very well, as you can see. And then the blueberries on it are super sweet. But I don't know how long before I need to refresh it. All right, so this is our messy berry patch. Here we have blackberries. Blackberries everywhere. Now we did a number on our pruning. So as you can see, there's not a lot of flowers, right? And I don't expect to actually get much by way of blackberries this year. I had let this get way out of control and it was a problem. So I came in here and just whacked. And so you can see I am getting some blossoms still, which is wonderful. But the way blackberries work is that they produce on last year's canes. Okay, so here, I'm gonna get something there. This is old. So this one must have been one that grew last year. But anything brand new, I don't think I'll get anything off of. And I don't know how to tell, to be honest. I just chopped. And all of this is pruning stuff that we have a wood chipper, and we're gonna go through and chip it all up. Now, I mentioned that I can't have any animals, right? I can't have quail, I can't have rabbits or anything like that. So trying to have any sort of ongoing compost requires creativity. So here, probably almost time to turn it again. Let me see. It's still very warm, but it's beginning to cool, so it's probably time to turn it. So in there, I actually have some horse manure and straw from a local stable. And I am hot composting it. I've had it up to 135 degrees. I go in there and I use a pitchfork and I turn it, and you can tell it rained a lot last night. So, but that's how I'm going to have additional compost for my garden. And then those right now, they have more of that horse manure and straw. But by fall, I will be putting leaves in there, and I'll make leaf mold out of that. So that's part of how I do compost. Eventually, I'm going to do some worms as well. So as you can see, it's messy. And because I have a family, right, my daughters want to be able to swing, so I don't use the middle of the garden. I use the edges. I didn't show you the grapevines. So let's come out here and do a quick update on those, because talking about using the edges, this looks like a great idea, right? But grapes don't follow boundaries. And so last year they kept trying to grow into my neighbor's yard. So I trimmed like crazy. I seriously whacked this down. And we are putting in some hog panels this year. And we are going to train them to go up and over those hog panels instead of into our neighbor's yard. So that's one of our plans this year. So I've got 3 grapevines, and I was really afraid I'd killed them. But it looks like they are actually doing very well, and I'm super pleased. But this one is determined to grow where it shouldn't. So I actually have to really work on this. I'm going to have to bring stuff in, grow it over it, and then start cutting off all the branches on the other side. And I was told eventually grapevines learn that you don't want them to grow there and they'll just stop producing. But you have to train it. So there you go. I have all these different approaches. I will have more updates yet to come, because the goal is to produce as much of our own produce as possible. I go to a local farm for all my animal products, and I go to another local farm for my grains. But I would like to be able to produce all of my own perishable vegetables and do like canning and fermenting and things like that. So I will keep you updated on how this goes. And I hope that you are enjoying your gardening wherever you are. So until next time, happy gardening.